Welcome to Mystery Whispers. I'm your host, Eleanor, with my warm British tones to guide you through tales of intrigue and deduction. If you're new here, settle in with a cup of tea. This is the place for sophisticated stories that help you unwind. Today, we're diving into a brand new original mystery in the style of the incomparable Agatha Christie, featuring the sharp-eyed Miss Jane Marple. Our story is called Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse, a Miss Marple Death Mystery. It's a long one, over 90 minutes of slow, deliberate narration to relax you, perfect for bedtime or a cozy afternoon. We'll go chapter by chapter, so feel free to pause if needed, but I promise the twists will keep you hooked. Chapter 1. Arrival at Thornfield Manor. Welcome to Mystery Whispers, dear listeners. I'm your host, Eleanor, here to wrap you in a cozy blanket of intrigue with my warm British tones. Settle in with a cuppa, perhaps, as we embark on a brand new tale in the style of Agatha Christie, featuring the ever-perceptive Miss Jane Marple. Our story, Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse, is a long, relaxing journey. Over 90 minutes of slow, deliberate narration to soothe you into a world of secrets and deduction. We'll unfold it chapter by chapter, so feel free to pause. But I wager the twists will keep you with me. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? A misty village, perhaps, or a bustling city? Hit that subscribe button for more mysteries, and let's step back to 1925. Picture, if you will, the English countryside in autumn. The air carries the scent of damp leaves, and a soft fog clings to the hedgerows. Miss Jane Marple adjusted her spectacles as the train rattled into Eldridge Hollow Station, its whistle cutting through the crisp October morning. At 70-something, she was no stranger to the gentle sway of a carriage. Yet this journey stirred an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. Her old friend, Lady Constance Harrington, had penned a letter that was equal parts invitation window, noting the tidy cottages of Eldridge Hollow, where women in aprons pegged laundry and children chased hoops along cobbled paths. The England of 1925 was a world in flux. Motor cars jostling with horse-drawn carts, the scars of the Great War still etched in the faces of men loitering at the village pub. Yet here, time seemed to linger, as if reluctant to disturb the countryside's quiet rhythms. Thornfield Manor came into view as the car crested a hill. A Georgian masterpiece of honey-colored stone, its tall windows catching the weak sunlight like watchful eyes. Ivy clung to its walls, softening the severity of its columns, and manicured lawns stretched toward a copse of elms. At the garden's heart stood the Crystal Greenhouse, Sir Reginald Harrington's latest obsession. It was a breathtaking structure, its glass panels gleaming like a faceted jewel, refracting light into delicate rainbows across the grass. Built to house exotic blooms, it was a triumph of modern engineering. Temperature controlled, with iron supports as sturdy as they were elegant. Jenkins pulled up to the manor's gravel drive where Lady Constance awaited. Her silver hair swept beneath a velvet hat. At 50, she was still handsome, though her eyes held a weariness that spoke of sleepless nights. "Jane, my dear," she exclaimed, clasping Miss Marple's hands. "You've come at last. I'm positively beside myself with this gathering Reginald's planned. Come, let's have tea. You must be chilled to the bone." The drawing room was a study in faded opulence. Chintz curtains, a crackling fire, and a mahogany table set with bone china. As they sipped Darjeeling, Miss Marple observed the household assembling, her keen eyes missing nothing. Sir Reginald Harrington bustled in, a portly man in his mid-50s, his cheeks flushed from exertion or claret. Soil dusted his tweed jacket, and his hands bore the calluses of a gentleman who fancied himself a horticulturist. "Miss Marple," he boomed, shaking her hand with vigor. "Constance has told me of your knack for puzzles. You must life less orderly." "Father's greenhouse is a fortress, Miss Marple," he drawled, exhaling smoke. "Locked tighter than the Bank of England. He's got the only key, keeps it on his watch chain like a talisman." The gardener, Mr. Silas Thorne, was introduced next, a wiry man in his late 50s, his face weathered like old leather, dirt ingrained under his nails. His eyes, sharp and guarded, flicked to Sir Reginald with a mix of loyalty and resentment. "Been with the estate 30 years, ma'am," he said gruffly. "The Crystal House is my domain, though the master fancies himself the expert. Them orchids don't thrive without my hand." Miss Lydia Croft, the maid, hovered at the room's edge, a slight girl in her early 20s with mousy hair and a habit of twisting her apron in nervous fingers. Her eyes darted to Arthur, then away, a flush creeping up her neck. "Tea, ma'am?" she murmured, offering a cup with trembling hands. Finally, Mr. Victor Langford entered, Sir Reginald's business partner in exotic plant imports. A sleek man in his 40s, his mustache was waxed to precision, and his cufflinks glinted with ostentatious gold. "Miss Marple," he said, bowing with a salesman's charm. "A pleasure. Reginald and I are revolutionizing the botanical trade. His greenhouse is merely the beginning." As the group dispersed for the evening, Lady Constance drew Miss Marple aside. "Jane, I can't shake this feeling. Reginald's obsession with that greenhouse has stirred tensions. Evelyn's cross, Arthur's reckless, and Langford, well, he's too smooth by half. Even Thorne seems out of sorts, and Lydia's jumpier than a kitten. You'll keep your eyes open, won't you?" Miss Marple patted her friend's hand, her smile serene but her mind already turning. "People are like gardens, Constance," she said softly, "full of hidden roots and unexpected thorns. I'll watch, never fear." Dinner was a formal affair, with silver gleaming under the chandelier and a menu of consommé, roast pheasant, and sherry trifle. Miss Marple, seated between Constance and Arthur, listened at the vicar's son with his secrets. Here the threads were richer, but human nature remained the same. She recalled a detail from the drive, a muddy path veering toward the greenhouse, half hidden by shrubs, and Arthur's watch chain, lacking the fob his father's bore. Small things, perhaps, but Miss Marple knew small things could unravel great mysteries. Chapter 2. The Greenhouse Unveiled. Settle deeper, dear listener, as the morning light gilds the English countryside. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, guiding you through this Agatha Christie-inspired tale with my warm British tones. Our story, Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse, unfolds slowly, perfect for unwinding. We're in 1925 at Thornfield Manor, where Miss Jane Marple's keen eyes are already catching whispers of trouble. If you're enjoying this cozy mystery, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments. What's your favorite part of a classic whodunit? The clues, the suspects, or the final reveal? And where are you listening from tonight? A quiet village, perhaps, or a bustling town? Subscribe for more, and let's step into the humid air of the greenhouse. The scent of earth and exotic blooms fills the air, as the manor's secrets begin to unfurl like petals. The morning after her arrival at Thornfield Manor, Miss Jane Marple rose early, her habit of village hours unbroken by the grandeur of the estate. The autumn sun filtered through her window, casting dappled light across the chintz curtains, and she dressed in her usual attire. A neat black dress, a cameo brooch at her throat, and a wool shawl to ward off the chill. Breakfast in the dining room was a hearty affair. Silver trays of kedgeree, kippers, and toast with marmalade, served by the nervous maid, Miss Lydia Croft, whose hands trembled as she poured coffee. Miss Marple noted the girl's quick glances toward young Arthur Harrington, who slouched at the table, his eyes shadowed from a late night. Sir Reginald Harrington, the master of the house, was in high spirits, his voice laced with irony. "That greenhouse is a fortress. Iron door, one key, and no way in or out without it. He guards it like a dragon hoarding gold." Mr. Silas Thorne, the gardener, lingered by the doorway, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. "It's secure all right," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. "I attend it day and night, but the master keeps that key on him. Not even I can get in without his say-so." Miss Marple smiled faintly, her needles clicking as she resumed her knitting in the corner. "A fortress, you say? How intriguing. I look forward to seeing it." After breakfast, Sir Reginald led the party across the dew-kissed lawns to the greenhouse, his enthusiasm undimmed by the faint drizzle that had begun to fall. The structure was even more impressive up close, a vast cathedral of glass, its curved panels catching the light like a prism, scattering rainbows across the gravel path. Iron supports gleamed with fresh paint, and steam rose faintly from vents, hinting at the controlled climate within. Miss Marple noted the isolation of the building, set apart from the manor by a stretch of lawn, with no low windows or side entrances visible. A single iron door, heavy and imposing, guarded the entrance. Sir Reginald produced a unique key from his watch chain, its brass etched with a floral motif. "This is the only key," he said proudly, turning it in the lock with a satisfying click. "I had it specially made in London. No duplicates, no way to pick it. The door locks automatically when closed, and the vents are secured from inside. My orchids are safer than the crown jewels." The group stepped inside, and Miss Marple felt the air shift, warm and humid, heavy with the scent of damp earth and tropical blooms. Paths of flagstone wound between towering palms, vibrant ferns, and trellises laden with orchids in every hue, blush pink, deep violet, and creamy white. At the center stood the black orchid, its petals like velvet midnight, displayed in a ceramic pot on a pedestal. Glass walls soared overhead, fogged slightly by condensation, and the iron framework creaked faintly. "York." Lady Evelyn snorted softly, adjusting her hat. "All this expense for flowers while the estate's roofs leak. Honestly, Reginald, your priorities." Arthur lit another cigarette, leaning against a trellis. "If you'd put that money into my motorcar venture, Father, we'd be rolling in profit. Instead, you're playing gardener." Sir Reginald's face reddened. "Enough, Arthur. Your schemes are as reckless as your card games. The greenhouse is an investment in beauty and science." Miss Lydia, carrying a tray of gardening tools, nearly dropped it when Arthur's gaze flicked her way. "Sir, the fertilizer you asked for," she mumbled, setting it down near the orchid's pedestal. Miss Marple noted the label, something chemical with a faint acrid smell. As they exited, Sir Reginald locked the door, pocketing the key with a flourish. "Safe as houses," he declared, patting his waistcoat. Miss Marple lingered, her eyes tracing the greenhouse's outline against the gray sky. A narrow path, half hidden by shrubs, curved around its base, leading to a tool shed. She filed the observation away, like a stitch in her knitting. The afternoon brought tension to the manor. In the library, Miss Marple overheard Arthur arguing with his father behind closed doors. "I need that loan, Father." Arthur's voice was sharp. "Those gambling debts, they'll ruin me if you don't help." Sir Reginald's reply was muffled but firm. "You've squandered enough, boy. No more." Later, Lady Evelyn confided in Constance over tea, her voice low. "Reginald's will leaves everything to Arthur, but he's threatened to cut him off. And that Langford, he's always scheming, pushing Reginald into risky ventures. I don't trust him." Miss Marple, knitting in an armchair, caught Lydia's whisper to a footman. "I saw Mr. Langford near the greenhouse last night, arguing with the master. Something about falsified shipment records." The maid's eyes were wide, her fingers twisting her apron. By evening, the household gathered for bridge in the drawing room, the air thick with cigar smoke and unspoken grudges. Sir Reginald, flushed with brandy, moon. A shadow moved near the tool shed, too brief to identify. "Curious," she murmured, her needles clicking softly. "Very curious indeed." Chapter 3. Whispers in the Garden. Good evening, dear listener, or perhaps it's morning where you are. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here to guide you through our Agatha Christie-inspired tale with my warm British tones. We're deep in the heart of 1925 at Thornfield Manor, where Miss Jane Marple's sharp eyes are catching the first threads of a tangled mystery. Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse is unfolding slowly, crafted to relax you over 90 minutes of intrigue. If you're savoring the suspense, give this video a thumbs up and share in the comments. What's the coziest setting for listening to a mystery? A fireside chair? A rainy window? Or perhaps a moonlit garden? Subscribe for more, and let's wander into the misty grounds of Thornfield. Imagine a soft rain pattering on the leaves, as secrets begin to stir like shadows in the fog. The second day at Thornfield Manor dawned gray and damp, the English countryside cloaked in a fine mist that softened the edges of the world. Miss Jane Marple, ever an early riser, stood at her window, her shawl draped over her shoulders, watching the drizzle bead on the glass. The crystal greenhouse glimmered faintly in the distance, its glass panels like a beacon amidst the sodden lawns. She'd slept lightly, her mind turning over the previous day's observations. Sir Reginald's pride in his locked fortress, Lady Evelyn's brittle smile, young Arthur's restless defiance, Mr. Thorne's guarded resentment, Miss Lydia's nervous glances, and Mr. Langford's polished charm. "Like a village fete," she murmured to herself, her needles clicking softly. All smiles on the surface, but rivalries bubbling beneath. Breakfast was subdued, the rain confining the household indoors. The dining room's chandelier cast a muted glow over the mahogany table, where kedgeree and poached eggs sat untouched by most. Lady Constance, her face pale, stirred her tea absently. Loam. Curious, she thought. Determined to clear her head, Miss Marple donned her mackintosh and took an umbrella for a stroll, despite the drizzle. The gardens were a masterpiece of order. Rose beds trimmed, hedges sculpted, but the greenhouse stood apart, isolated by a sweep of lawn that offered no cover for an intruder. She circled it slowly, noting the iron door's heavy bolt, the high vents sealed tight, and the absence of low windows. The hidden path she'd spotted yesterday wound behind a row of yews, leading to a tool shed half buried in ivy. A faint scuff mark in the mud caught her eye, narrow, like a woman's shoe. "Interesting," she murmured, tucking the detail away. In the library, she found Lady Evelyn poring over ledgers, her fingers tapping restlessly. "Miss Marple, you're a woman of sense," Evelyn said, closing the book with a snap. "Reginald's greenhouse is bleeding us dry. The estate's mortgages are piling up, and he spends thousands on plants. If something were to happen to him—" She trailed off, her eyes sharp. "Well, the insurance would be a godsend." Constance, entering with a tray of biscuits, gasped. "Evelyn, that's a dreadful thing to say." "Just thinking aloud, dear sister-in-law," Evelyn replied, her smile thin. "Hypotheticals, nothing more." Miss Marple sipped her tea, her expression mild. "Finances can weigh heavily, Lady Evelyn. In St. Mary Mead, I knew a farmer who sold his best cow to save his land. Desperation makes us bold." Evelyn's lips tightened, but she said nothing, turning back to her ledgers. Later, in the conservatory, Miss Marple found Arthur sprawled on a wicker chair, a glass of whiskey in hand despite the early hour. "You've a knack for listening, Miss Marple," he said, his voice slurred. "Father's will leaves the estate to me, but he's threatening to change it. Says I'm unreliable. And Langford's in his ear, pushing to redirect funds to their blasted orchid trade. I'm up to my neck in debts. Bitterness." Miss Lydia was polishing silver in the pantry when Miss Marple found her. The girl jumped, dropping a spoon with a clatter. "Oh, ma'am, you startled me," she gasped, her cheeks flushing. Miss Marple bent to retrieve the spoon, noting Lydia's worn shoes, narrow like the print by the greenhouse. "You seem troubled, my dear," she said gently. "Something on your mind?" Lydia hesitated, twisting her apron. I overheard Mr. Langford last night, ma'am. He was arguing with the master in the study. Something about falsified shipment papers for the orchids. I shouldn't have listened, but—" She bit her lip, eyes darting to the door. "Eavesdropping is human nature," Miss Marple said kindly. "In my village, the postmistress hears all sorts of things. It's what one does with the knowledge that matters." That evening, the household gathered for a formal dinner, the table aglow with candlelight and crystal. Sir Reginald, in high spirits, announced a surprise. "I've decided to sell the Black Orchid," he declared, raising his glass. "The proceeds will shore up the estate's finances, a practical move for once." The reaction was immediate. Langford's fork paused mid-air. "Reginald, we had a deal. That orchid's the cornerstone of our trade." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her smile almost genuine. "Finally, some sense." Arthur slammed his glass down. "What about my share, father? You can't just—" Thorne, serving wine, spilled a drop, his face like thunder. Lydia, clearing plates, nearly dropped a tureen. Miss Marple, seated beside Constance, watched the ripple of tension. "A bold decision, Sir Reginald," she said mildly. "Change often stirs the pot." As the meal ended, Sir Reginald stood. "I'm off to the greenhouse to check the humidity. Shan't be long." He patted his pocket where the key gleamed and strode out into the night. The clock ticked toward midnight, its chimes echoing through the silent manor. Miss Marple retired to her room, her knitting in hand, her mind weaving threads. The greenhouse's security, the muddy print, the chemical suspense. If you're caught in the web of this mystery, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments. What's your favorite moment in a whodunit? The shock of the crime, or the thrill of the first clue? Where are you listening from tonight? A cozy nook or a starry countryside? Subscribe for more, and let's step into the eerie dawn. The rain has stopped, but a heavier silence grips the manor as a terrible discovery awaits. Dawn broke over Thornfield Manor with a pale, reluctant light, the mist clinging to the lawns like a shroud. Miss Jane Marple had slept fitfully, her dreams threaded with the click of her knitting needles and the faint glow of the greenhouse under the moon. She was roused by a sharp knock at her door, the sound cutting through the stillness of the guest room. Lady Constance Harrington stood there, her face ashen, her velvet dressing gown clutched tightly. "Jane, oh Jane, come quickly," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Something's terribly wrong at the greenhouse. Reginald, he's not responding." Miss Marple dressed swiftly, pinning her cameo brooch with steady hands despite the urgency in Constance's eyes. She followed her friend down the grand staircase, where the household was gathering in a state of hushed alarm. Lady Evelyn, her hair still in curling papers, stood rigid by the hall table, her emerald necklace absent for once. Arthur Harrington, bleary-eyed and unshaven, tugged at his collar as if it choked him. Mr. Silas Thorne, the gardener, hovered near the door, his hands stained with earth, his expression unreadable. Miss Lydia Croft, the maid, clutched a shawl, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been weeping. Mr. Victor Langford, unusually disheveled, paced with a cigarette unlit between his fingers. "What's happened?" Miss Marple asked, her voice calm but firm, like a schoolmistress addressing a wayward class. Constance wrung her hands. "Reginald went to the greenhouse last night, after dinner. He said he'd check the humidity. Some nonsense about his orchids. He never came back." Jenkins tried the door, littered the flagstone path, their soil spilling like dark blood. At the center, near the pedestal where the black orchid had stood, lay Sir Reginald Harrington, face down, his limbs sprawled unnaturally. A small glass vial, its label smudged, was clutched in his rigid hand. The black orchid itself was gone, the pedestal bare save for a scattering of petals. Lady Evelyn stifled a scream, clutching Constance's arm. Arthur swore under his breath, his cigarette dropping to the floor. Lydia let out a sob, turning away, while Langford's face paled, his cufflinks glinting as he gripped the doorframe. Thorne stood frozen, his crowbar dangling. Miss Marple stepped forward, her eyes sharp behind her spectacles. "Don't touch anything," she said softly, her tone commanding attention. She knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene. Sir Reginald's face was contorted, his lips tinged blue, his eyes staring blankly. The vial in his hand bore a faint chemical odor, acrid and sharp. She noted the key on his watch chain still tucked in his waistcoat pocket, and the undisturbed lock on the inside of the door. The vents high above were sealed, the glass walls unmarred by cracks or signs of forced entry. "Fetch the doctor," Miss Marple said to Jenkins, "and the police. This is no accident." The local doctor, a dour man named Dr. Grayson, arrived within the hour, his black bag clutched tightly. He examined the body, his brow furrowed. "Cyanide poisoning," he pronounced, sniffing the vial. "Quick but agonizing. Death within minutes. The vial matches the gardening supplies. Thorne, you use these, don't you?" Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Aye, for pests. But I keep 'em locked in the shed. Someone must have taken it." Inspector Craddock, a bluff policeman with a walrus mustache, arrived soon after, his boots thudding on the flagstones. "Suicide, most likely," he declared, scribbling in his notebook. Door locked from the inside, key in his pocket, vial in his hand. Household was in disarray. Evelyn sat in the drawing room, her face pale but composed. "He was under such strain," she said to Craddock. "The estate's finances, Arthur's debts. Perhaps he saw no way out." Arthur, pacing by the fireplace, snapped. "Don't pin this on me, Mother. I was in the billiard room all night, smoking. Alone." Langford, smoothing his mustache, added, "I was writing letters in my room. Heard nothing unusual." Thorne, summoned from the gardens, growled, "I was in my cottage with my wife. She'll vouch for me." Lydia, twisting her apron, whispered, "I was clearing dishes till 11, sir, then to bed." Miss Marple sat quietly. Her knitting resumed, but her ears caught every nuance. The alibis were vague, the motives clear. Evelyn stood to gain from insurance, Arthur from inheritance, Langford from business control, Thorne from resentment, and Lydia, perhaps tangled in Arthur's orbit. A torn scrap of paper in Reginald's pocket, glimpsed as Craddock bagged it, mentioned falsified records and Langford's name. A clue or a distraction? As the police sealed the greenhouse, Miss Marple stepped outside, her umbrella shielding her from a fresh drizzle. She studied the lawn, noting the absence of tracks leading to the door, save for their own. The tool shed's muddy path, however, showed fresh scuff marks, and a faint chemical smell lingered near its door. "Things are not always as they seem," she said softly, her mind turning like the pages of a well-worn book. In St. Mary Mead, she'd once solved a poisoning by noting a misplaced teacup. Here, the locked door and missing orchid were pieces of a larger puzzle. She recalled the greenhouse's vents. Could gas have been introduced? But they were locked from within. The footprint, the vial, the scratch. All threads to be woven. Chapter 5. Initial Questioning. Welcome back, dear listener, to the shadowed halls of Thornfield Manor room. Her knitting needles clicking rhythmically, her eyes sharp behind her spectacles. The room, with its chintz curtains and crackling fire, felt like a stage where each player hid their lines. Inspector Craddock, his walrus mustache bristling, had set up a makeshift office in the library, summoning each member of the household for questioning. His notebook lay open, its pages already smudged with hasty scrawls, and his tone was brisk, if not entirely confident. Miss Marple, invited to observe as a courtesy to Lady Constance, settled into an armchair, her presence unassuming, but her attention razor-sharp. She'd seen investigations in St. Mary Mead, petty thefts, a poisoned dog, but murder in a locked greenhouse was a puzzle of a different order. The vial of cyanide, the missing black orchid, the locked door with the key in Reginald's pocket, all pointed to an impossible crime. Yet, as she often remarked, human nature was rarely impossible, only misunderstood. Inspector Craddock began with Lady Evelyn Harrington, who entered the library with the poise of a woman accustomed to scrutiny. Her dark hair was pinned neatly, but the absence of her emerald necklace, likely paste, Miss Marple noted, spoke of financial strain. "Lady Evelyn," Craddock said, pen poised, "where were you last night after dinner? When Sir Reginald went to the greenhouse, Evelyn's lips curved in a faint smile, her hands folded primly. I retired to my room around 10, Inspector. I was exhausted. Reginald's dinner announcement about selling the orchid caused quite a stir. I read for a bit, then slept. I heard nothing until Constance's alarm this morning. Craddock frowned. No one to confirm that, I suppose. My maid, Lydia, helped me undress, but she left by 10:30. Evelyn replied smoothly. Surely you don't suspect me. Reginald's death is a tragedy, but, well, his financial decisions were driving us to ruin. The insurance might save the estate. Miss Marple's needles paused. A practical woman, she murmured to herself. Recalled village. A young man with debts had once pawned a stolen brooch. Arthur's desperation was palpable, like a frayed rope ready to snap. Mr. Victor Langford followed, his mustache waxed despite the early hour, his cufflinks gleaming. I was writing letters in my room, Inspector, he said, his voice smooth as polished oak. Business correspondence. Our orchid trade is complex. I heard nothing, saw nothing. Reginald's death is a blow to our venture, but I'll manage. Craddock held up the torn scrap from Reginald's pocket, its ink accusing Langford of falsified records. Care to explain this? Langford's smile didn't waver. A forgery, clearly. Someone's trying to smear me. Reginald and I had disagreements, yes, but murder? Preposterous. Miss Marple's lips pursed. Langford's composure was too perfect, like a St. Mary Mead shopkeeper who'd sworn his scales were honest. The letter was a bold clue, or a clever distraction. Mr. Silas Thorne entered next, his boots cleaned but his hands still rough with earth. I was in my cottage, with my wife, he growled. Went to bed after dinner. She'll tell you the same. I didn't touch that poison, though the vials from my shed. Someone must have nicked it. Craddock leaned forward. You've access to cyanide, Thorne. And you were sore about Reginald cutting your pension. Thorne's eyes flashed. 30 years I've slaved here. He owed me. But I don't kill for money. Miss Marple watched his fists clench, recalling a gardener in her village who'd sabotaged a rival's roses. Thorne's loyalty was deep, but so was his resentment. Finally, Miss Lydia Croft shuffled in, her apron twisted into knots. I was clearing dishes till 11, sir, she whispered, her eyes downcast. Then I went to the servants' quarters. I didn't see the master after dinner. Craddock's tone softened. You seem nervous, girl. Know anything about that vial? Lydia flinched. No, sir. I saw Mr. Thorne's supplies were meticulous, not careless. And the torn letter in Reginald's pocket? Too convenient, like a prop in a village play. She wandered to the tool shed, where the chemical smell lingered. A small lock hung askew, easily forced. Inside a shelf held more vials, one missing. A red herring, perhaps, she mused, or a careless mistake. Back in the drawing room, Constance whispered, Jane, what do you make of it? The greenhouse was locked, the key in his pocket. How could anyone have done it? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. In St. Mary Mead, I once solved a locked shed theft. The trick was a hidden latch. Here the greenhouse is a fortress, but fortresses have their secrets, vents perhaps, or unseen gaps. Craddock overheard, scoffing. Vents are sealed, ma'am. No gaps in that glass. Suicide's simplest, but I'll chase every lead. As the day wore on, the household fractured. Evelyn retreated to her accounts, Arthur to his whiskey, Langford to his letters, Thorne to his gardens, and Lydia to her chores. Miss Marple sat by the fire, knitting a scarf, her mind weaving threads. The footprint, the vial, the letter, the missing orchid. Each suspect had motive: inheritance, debts, business, resentment, perhaps love. But the locked door baffled her. Could poison have been administered earlier? But Reginald's death was swift, the cyanide fresh. She recalled a St. Mary Mead poisoning, a farmer's wife with a tainted pie. Timing was everything. Here the greenhouse's isolation, its single key, pointed to an impossible act. Yet as she'd often said, people are never quite what they seem. Chapter 6. Hidden Motives. Welcome back, dear listener, to the hushed corridors of Thornfield Manor. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here with my warm British tones to weave you deeper into this Agatha Christie-inspired tale. It's 1925, and Miss Jane Marple's quiet wisdom is untangling a web of morning's drizzle. Sir Reginald's death, poisoned by cyanide in a locked fortress, remained an enigma. But Miss Marple knew that motives, like weeds, often grew in hidden corners. Inspector Craddock, his walrus mustache twitching with frustration, had taken to pacing the library, his notebook brimming with contradictory statements. The alibis from the previous day's questioning, Lady Evelyn in her room, Arthur in the billiard room, Mr. Langford writing letters, Mr. Thorne in his cottage, Miss Lydia clearing dishes, were flimsy, like gossamer threads that snapped under scrutiny. The torn letter accusing Langford of falsified records, the cyanide vial with Thorne's initials, the missing black orchid, and the narrow footprint near the pedestal, all pointed to a puzzle with too many pieces. Miss Marple, invited to observe as a courtesy to Lady Constance, sipped her tea and listened, her mind weaving patterns from the chaos. Her first opportunity came in the conservatory, where Miss Lydia Croft was arranging flowers, her hands trembling as she clipped wilted roses. The girl's mousy hair was tucked under a cap, and her eyes darted nervously, as if expecting a reprimand. Miss Marple approached, her smile gentle. "You seem fond of young Mr. Arthur, my dear," she said, her tone as soft as the petals Lydia held. "He's a charming lad, but troubled, I think." Lydia's cheeks flushed scarlet, a rose dropping to the floor. "Oh, ma'am, I don't know what you mean," she stammered, twisting her apron. "He's kind to me is all. Always a smile, even when he's in a state. But I'd never. I didn't do anything wrong." Her voice cracked, and she bent to retrieve the flower, her narrow shoes scuffing the tiles. Miss Marple's needles paused. "In St. Mary Mead I knew a girl who loved a lad above her station. It made her bold and vulnerable. If you know something, Lydia, it's best to share it." Lydia's eyes welled. I took something, ma'am. Not the orchid, I swear. The estate couldn't afford it. Not with that greenhouse draining the coffers. Said he'd sell the orchid to cover it. But what about me? Left with nothing but dirt under my nails. He gestured to the tool shed where the cyanide vials were kept. "I'm no thief, nor a killer. But someone took that poison. Someone who knew my shed." Miss Marple noted the lock on the shed, its clasp slightly bent, as if forced. You're a careful man, Mr. Thorne. It's curious that vial went missing. He met her gaze, his eyes hard. Careful don't mean foolproof, ma'am. In the library, Lady Evelyn was sorting through a jewelry box, her fingers lingering on a string of pearls. Miss Marple, entering quietly, remarked, "Those are lovely, Lady Evelyn. Real pearls, I presume." Evelyn's smile was brittle. "Once, perhaps. These are paste, like so much else here. Reginald's obsession with that greenhouse left us scraping by. I've pawned more than I care to admit." She snapped the box shut. "If you're fishing, Miss Marple, I'll say it plain. His death means insurance money. I won't pretend it doesn't help." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Honesty is refreshing. In my village, a lady pawned her rings to save face, but secrets have a way of surfacing." Evelyn's gaze faltered, and she turned away, her hands trembling slightly. Arthur was next, found in the billiard room, a whiskey glass in hand. Despite the noon hour, his tie was loose, his hair unkempt. "Miss Marple," he said, his voice slurred, "you're the only one here not hounding me. The inspector thinks I did it. Debts, inheritance, all that rot. I didn't. But father was going to cut me off, and Langford was egging him on. I found gambling slips in my room. Someone planted them, I swear." Miss Marple's needles clicked. Planted evidence is a cruel trick. Like a St. Mary Mead boy blamed for stolen apples he never touched. In the study, Mr. Victor Langford was packing pedals behind. She strolled to the greenhouse, still cordoned off, and studied the exterior. The iron door was unmarred, the key still in Reginald's pocket at death. The vents, high and locked, offered no entry. Yet the footprint, smudged, deliberate, hinted at staging. She recalled a St. Mary Mead case where a forged note misled the vicar. "Red herrings bloom like weeds," she murmured, her mind turning to the tool shed's bent lock and Lydia's confession. At tea, Constance whispered, "Jane, it's all so dreadful. The police suspect Arthur, but I can't believe it. And Lydia's been crying all day." Miss Marple patted her hand. "In my village, tears often hide truths. But we'll find the thread, Constance." As evening fell, the household gathered for a tense supper, the chandelier casting long shadows. Evelyn avoided Arthur's gaze. Langford spoke of business. Thorne served with a scowl, and Lydia dropped a spoon, her eyes red. Miss Marple, knitting quietly, felt the weight of hidden motives. Love, greed, betrayal, all tangled like ivy. Chapter 7. The Missing Orchid. Welcome back, dear listener, to the misty grounds of Thornfield Manor. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here with my warm British tones to guide you through this Agatha Christie-inspired tale. It's 1925, and Miss Jane Marple's sharp mind is weaving through a tangle of clues in Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse. This 90-minute journey is crafted to relax and intrigue you, so settle in. If you're hooked on the suspense, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments. What's the most tantalizing clue so far? The missing orchid? The locked door? Or a suspect's slip? Where are you listening from tonight? A quiet village or a bustling city? Subscribe for more and let's chase the next twist. The air grows taut with suspicion as a missing treasure stirs the pot of secrets. The third day at Thornfield Manor dawned with by the pedestal, the cyanide vial with Thorne's initials, the torn letter accusing Langford, and Lydia's nervous confession about a stolen letter. Each was a stitch in a pattern, but the design eluded her. The search began in the guest rooms, where Mr. Victor Langford's suitcase revealed nothing but ledgers, a packet of rare plant seeds, and a monogrammed handkerchief. "As I said, Inspector," Langford drawled, his mustache twitching. "I'm a businessman, not a thief. The orchid's value is in its sale, not in hiding it." His eyes flicked to Miss Marple, as if gauging her thoughts. She smiled benignly, but noted the seeds, contraband perhaps, for his and Reginald's trade. Lady Evelyn's room yielded little: a jewelry box of paste gems, a ledger showing pawned heirlooms, and a novel left open to a page about poison. "Mere fiction," Evelyn snapped when questioned, her cheeks pale. "I read to escape this wretched house. If you're looking for the orchid, try Arthur. He's desperate enough." Arthur's room was next, and the discovery came swiftly. A constable rummaging beneath the bed pulled out a burlap sack, its contents unmistakable. The black orchid, its velvet petals slightly wilted but intact. The room fell silent, Arthur's face draining of color as he stood in the doorway, a cigarette dangling unlit. "That's not mine," he protested, his voice hoarse. "I swear someone planted it. I was in the billiard room all night, ask anyone." Craddock's eyes narrowed. "Planted, you say? Like those gambling slips we found? You've debts, lad, and your father was cutting you off. That orchid's worth £10,000, enough to clear your slate." Arthur slammed his fist on the dresser. "I didn't kill him. I loved him, even if he was a fool about that greenhouse." His eyes were wild, but Miss Marple caught a flicker of fear, like a St. Mary Mead boy caught with stolen apples. Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice gentle. "The orchid's condition, Inspector. Those wilted petals suggest it wasn't carefully hidden. A thief would protect such a prize." Steady, but his eyes stormy. "Mr. Thorne," she said, pausing by a shelf of chemical bottles, "the orchid's been found, but not the truth. You knew the greenhouse better than anyone. Any way in or out we've missed?" Thorne's jaw tightened. "No, ma'am. That door's the only way, and the master had the key. Vents are locked. Glass is solid. I told you, someone took that cyanide from my shed. I'm no killer, but I'm no fool either. Someone's setting me up." His gaze lingered on the bent lock of the shed, as if accusing it. Miss Marple nodded. "In St. Mary Mead, a gardener once hid tools in a hollow tree. People hide things in familiar places, don't they?" Thorne's eyes flickered, but he said nothing, turning back to his shears. In the servants' quarters, Miss Lydia Croft was folding linens, her hands trembling. "Miss Lydia," Miss Marple said softly, "you mentioned taking a letter for Arthur. Did you see the orchid that day, near the greenhouse?" Lydia's eyes widened. "No, ma'am. I was near the greenhouse, fetching tools for Mr. Thorne, but I didn't take it, I swear. I only wanted to help Arthur." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands, her narrow shoes scuffing the floor. Miss Marple patted her shoulder. "Love makes us bold, my dear, but it can also blind us." Lydia's confession deepened her involvement, but her tears felt genuine, or well-rehearsed. Lady Constance, wringing her hands, caught Miss Marple in the hall. "Jane, they're saying Arthur did it. That orchid in his room, it's damning, but he's not a murderer. And Evelyn's too calm, don't you think? Langford's too slick, and Thorne's too bitter. Even Lydia's hiding something. What do you see? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. In my village, a stolen pie led to a confession of jealousy. The orchid's a clue, Constance, but not the heart of it. The locked door is the key. Mystery, she murmured. The truth hides in plain sight. The orchid's discovery pointed to Arthur, but its wilting suggested haste, not greed. The letter, the vial, the footprint, all red herrings, or threads in a cleverer tapestry. Chapter 8. Nighttime Revelations. Welcome back, dear listener, to the moonlit shadows of Thornfield Manor. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here with my warm British tones to guide you through this Agatha Christie-inspired tale. It's 1925, and Miss Jane Marple's keen eyes are piercing the darkness of a perplexing mystery. Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse unfolds slowly, a 90-minute journey crafted to relax and intrigue you. If you're caught in the web of suspense, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments, what's the most thrilling part of a mystery for you? The late-night clues or the unexpected twists? Where are you listening from tonight? A quiet bedroom or a starlit garden? Subscribe for more, and let's slip into the stillness of the night. The manor sleeps, but secrets whisper under the moon, as truths begin to stir like leaves in the dark. As night fell over Thornfield Manor, the third evening since Sir Reginald Harrington's death cast a pall over the estate, the air thick with the scent of damp grass and unspoken fears. Miss Jane Marple sat by her bedroom window, her knitting needles resting in her lap, the moonlight silvering the crystal greenhouse in the distance. Its glass panels glowed faintly, a silent witness to the impossible crime, Reginald poisoned by cyanide in a locked fortress, the key in his pocket, the black orchid stolen and now found in Arthur's room. The clues, the narrow footprint, the smudged vial, the torn letter accusing Langford, the scratches on the pedestal and dining table formed a pattern, but one still shrouded in shadow. Miss Marple's mind, honed by years of village intrigues, turned over each thread, seeking the stitch that would unravel the truth. The household had retired early, the weight of suspicion stifling conversation at dinner. Lady Evelyn had picked at her food, her eyes darting to Arthur, who drank heavily and spoke little, like a frozen lake, and paused by the yews where she'd seen a shadow the previous night. The narrow path to the tool shed was muddy, and she noted fresh scuff marks, narrow, like those in the greenhouse, but too faint to identify. As she approached the shed, a faint rustle made her pause. A figure emerged from the shadows, Miss Lydia, her apron clutched tightly, her face pale in the moonlight. "Oh, Miss Marple," she gasped, a hand to her chest. "You startled me. I was just checking the shed. Mr. Thorne asked me to fetch a trowel earlier, but I forgot." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "At this hour, my dear?" "In St. Mary Mead, I knew a girl who crept out at night to meet a beau. What brings you here?" Lydia's cheeks flushed, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think, ma'am. I took the orchid, I admit it, for Arthur. He's in such trouble with his debts, and I thought selling it might help. I hid it in his room, but I swear I didn't kill the master. I found the greenhouse door ajar that night, and I slipped in, but he was already gone." Her voice broke, tears spilling. Miss Marple patted her arm. There. Truth is a heavy burden, but it lightens with sharing. You left the footprint then? Lydia nodded, sobbing. I didn't mean to. I panicked and smudged it. Please don't tell the inspector. Miss Marple's expression was kind but firm. We'll see, my dear. But secrets, like flowers, wilt if kept too long. Returning to the manor, Miss Marple heard raised voices from the billiard room. She peered through the crack in the door where Arthur stood, whiskey glass in hand, confronting Mr. Langford. You're behind this, aren't you? Arthur slurred, his face flushed. That letter accusing you of fraud. It's too convenient. You wanted Father's share of the business. Langford's mustache twitched, his voice icy. Watch your tongue, boy. I've no need to kill for profit. Your father's death hurts me as much as footprint, but not the murder. The orchid's placement felt staged, like the gambling slips in Arthur's room. She recalled a St. Mary Mead theft where a stolen watch was planted to mislead. The scratches on the pedestal, the dining table, suggested something dragged, perhaps a tool or container. The vent residue niggled at her. It wasn't dust, but something sticky, like gum. She sat by the window, knitting, and reviewed the timeline. Reginald had gone to the greenhouse after dinner, around 10. Lydia claimed the door was ajar, but the key was found in his pocket. Could someone have slipped in earlier? But the cyanide's speed meant death was near midnight. She recalled the tool shed's bent lock, the chemical smell. A clever trick, she murmured, but not clever enough. A soft knock interrupted her. Lady Constance, her face drawn, slipped in. Jane, I can't sleep. The inspector's hounding Arthur. But I saw something odd tonight. Thorn, near the greenhouse, looking furtive. And Evelyn's been too calm, don't you think? Like she's hiding relief. Miss Marple nodded. In my village, a calm face often hid the guiltiest heart. But we need more than suspicions, Constance. As midnight chimed, Miss Marple glanced out, seeing another shadow by the yews, taller this time. Perhaps Thorn. The greenhouse glowed, its secrets locked tight. Like a village riddle, she mused. The answers in the details, scratches, shadows, and a door that lies. Chapter 9. Complications Arise. Welcome back, dear listener, to the fog-laden grounds of Thornfield Manor. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here with my warm British tones to guide you through this Agatha Christie-inspired tale. It's 1925, and Miss Jane Marple's quiet wisdom is navigating a maze of secrets in Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse. This 90-minute journey is crafted to relax and intrigue you, so settle in with a cuppa. If you're gripped by the suspense, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments. What's the most puzzling clue you spotted so? The scratches on the pedestal and dining table, the sticky residue by the vent, and Lydia's confession of stealing the orchid. Yet each thread seemed to tangle further, like a skein of wool knotted by careless hands. Inspector Craddock, his walrus mustache drooping with exhaustion, was growing impatient. This case is a devil's knot, Miss Marple, he grumbled, pacing the library. Arthur's got motive and the orchid, but that locked door stumps me. No one could have gotten in or out, not with the key inside. He'd ordered a deeper search of the manor, hoping to uncover more evidence. But the household's alibis remained shaky, their motives sharper than ever. Miss Marple, invited to observe, followed Craddock to the study, where a new discovery sent ripples through the investigation. A constable, rifling through Sir Reginald's desk, unearthed a document, a draft of a new will, dated just days before his death. It named Mr. Victor Langford as the primary beneficiary of the estate's botanical trade, cutting Arthur out entirely. The ink was fresh, the signature smudged, as if written in haste. "A forgery," Langford declared when shown the document, his mustache quivering. "I never asked for this. Reginald was my partner, not my puppet. Someone's trying to pin this on me." Craddock's eyes narrowed. "Convenient, Langford, that you'd gain the business. And that letter in his pocket accused you of fraud. Care to explain?" Langford's voice was icy. "I've said it before, those accusations are nonsense. Check my ledgers, everything's above board. Someone's playing a dirty game." Miss Marple's needles paused, her mind turning. The will felt like another red herring, too blatant, like the planted gambling slips in Arthur's room. In St. Mary Mead, a forged note had once misled a shopkeeper. Here the stakes were higher. She noted Langford's clenched fists, his polished cufflinks glinting. A man too composed, perhaps, for innocence. In the garden, Miss Marple sought out Lydia Croft was folding linens, her hands trembling more than usual. "Miss Lydia," Miss Marple said gently, "you've been brave to admit taking the orchid, but you mentioned seeing Arthur near the greenhouse. Was there anything else? Perhaps something you didn't tell the inspector?" Lydia's eyes welled, her voice a whisper. I saw Mr. Thorne there too, ma'am, before dinner. He was carrying a small box, like the ones he keeps chemicals in. I thought it was for the plants, but now I'm frightened." She twisted her apron, her narrow shoes scuffing the floor. Miss Marple patted her hand. "Fear makes us see shadows, my dear. But truth is like a flower. It blooms in time." A sudden commotion interrupted her thoughts. In the drawing room, Lady Evelyn was clutching her throat, her face flushed as she gasped for air. "Poison!" she cried, collapsing onto a chaise. The household gathered, panic rippling through the room. Arthur rushed to her side. Constance called for the doctor, and Langford stood frozen, his face pale. Miss Marple, calm as ever, noted Evelyn's teacup, its rim stained with a faint residue. Dr. Grayson arrived swiftly, his black bag in hand. "Not poison," he declared after examining her. "An allergic reaction, likely to the almond pastries. She'll recover with rest." Evelyn, pale but breathing easier, waved off concern, but her eyes darted to the teacup, as if suspecting more. Miss Marple's lips pursed. "A false alarm, perhaps," she murmured, "but a timely one." The residue in the cup was not cyanide, but its presence suggested tampering, or another red herring. In St. Mary Mead, a similar scare had distracted from a theft. Here, it felt like a diversion. At dinner, the atmosphere was electric with suspicion. Arthur, sullen, drank heavily, muttering about the will. "Father wouldn't do that to me," he slurred. "Langford's behind it, mark my words." Under the moon. A shadow moved near the tool shed, tall, deliberate. Thorne, perhaps, or another? The new will, Evelyn's scare, the missing vial, all complicated the tapestry. "Human nature," she murmured, "is a garden of secrets. and someone's been pruning carefully. Chapter 10. The Deduction Gathers. Welcome back, dear listener, to the hushed halls of Thornfield Manor, where secrets linger like mist. I'm Eleanor, your host at Mystery Whispers, here with my warm British tones to guide you through this Agatha Christie-inspired tale. It's 1925, and Miss Jane Marple's sharp mind is weaving a tapestry of clues in Corpse at the Crystal Greenhouse. This 90-minute journey is crafted to relax and intrigue you, so settle in with a cozy blanket. If you're gripped by the suspense, give a thumbs up and tell me in the comments, what's the most baffling part of this mystery? The locked door or the tangled motives? Where are you listening from tonight? A fireside nook or a rainy window? Subscribe for more, and let's gather the threads of truth. The greenhouse stands silent, but Miss Marple's deductions stir like petals falling into place. The fifth day at Thornfield Manor dawned with a fragile clarity, the autumn sun breaking through the mist to cast pale light across the lawns. Miss Jane Marple sat in the conservatory, her knitting needles clicking softly, her eyes fixed on the crystal greenhouse in the distance. Its glass panels, fogged with morning dew, seemed to mock the investigation with their impenetrability. Sir Reginald Harrington's death, poisoned by cyanide in a locked fortress, the key in his pocket, the black orchid stolen and found in Arthur's room, remained a puzzle of maddening complexity. The clues were a tangled skein: the narrow footprint, the cyanide vial with Thorne's initials, the torn letter accusing Langford, the scratches on the pedestal and dining table, the sticky vent residue, Lydia's confession, the forged will, and Evelyn's allergic scare. Each was a thread, but Miss Marple knew the pattern was door, locked from inside, the key in Reginald's pocket, high vents, sealed internally, glass walls unmarred by cracks. Yet the narrow footprint, Lydia's by her confession, had been smudged, as if to obscure intent. The pedestal's scratch, mirrored by the dining tables, suggested something dragged. A tool, perhaps, or a container. The vent residue, sticky like gum, hinted at a device, but the internal locks ruled out external tampering. The cyanide vial, with its loose cap, was too neatly tied to Thorne's shed. Miss Marple's mind turned to the timeline. Reginald had gone to the greenhouse at 10, after announcing the orchid's sale. Lydia claimed the door was ajar when she stole the orchid, but he was already dead. Cyanide acted within minutes, placing death near midnight. The broken pots suggested a struggle, but the dry soil puzzled her. The rain should have muddied the scene. A staged chaos, she murmured, recalling a St. Mary Mead case where a broken vase masked a theft. She sought out Lady Constance in the drawing room, where the older woman was sorting letters, her face lined with worry. "Jane, the inspector's fixated on Arthur," Constance said, her voice trembling. "That orchid in his room, the gambling debts. It looks bad, but I can't believe he'd kill his father. And Evelyn's too calm. Langford's too slick. Thorne's too bitter. Lydia's too frightened. What do you see?" Miss Marple patted her hand. "In my village, a stolen pie led to a confession of envy. The orchid's a distraction, Constance, but the locked door is the heart. Someone knew Reginald's habits, his late-night checks, his flask of tea. Her next stop was the tool shed, where Mr. Silas Thorne was oiling a spade, his movements sharp with suppressed anger. "Mr. Thorne," she said, pausing by the shelf of chemical bottles. "You mentioned another missing vial, and you knew the greenhouse's every corner. Could someone have tampered with Reginald's tea, perhaps, before he locked himself in?" Thorne's eyes narrowed. Tea? He always uses for plant samples. I thought it was for the orchids, but I swear I only took the orchid to help Arthur. Her voice broke, tears spilling. Miss Marple's tone was kind. Love blinds us, my dear, but it also sharpens our sight. You've helped more than you know. In the library, Miss Marple found Arthur pacing, a whiskey glass in hand. Miss Marple, they're going to arrest me, he said, his voice slurred. That orchid, the will, it's all a setup. Langford's behind it, I know it. He wanted Father's business, and now he's got it. Miss Marple's needles clicked. In my village, a boy blamed for theft was saved by a single truth. What did you see that night, Arthur, near the greenhouse? He hesitated, his eyes darting. I saw Thorne lurking before dinner. And Father's flask, it was on the dining table, not with him. Someone could have tampered with it. Miss Marple's mind raced. The flask, a silver one, Reginald's constant companion, was missing from the crime scene. Could the cyanide have been in his tea, administered before he locked the door? But the timing was tight, the poison swift. She recalled the vent residue, the scratches, the smudged footprint. A clever trick, she murmured. But the door remains the puzzle. She returned to the greenhouse, slipping past the constable with a nod. The pedestal's scratch was deliberate, like the dining tables, suggesting a dragged object. Perhaps the flask itself dropped in haste. The vent residue niggled at her. It wasn't gum, but something waxy, like sealing wax. Could a string have been used, pulled through the vent to lock the door? But the internal bolts made it impossible. At tea, Lady Evelyn joined her, her composure strained. Miss Marple, this will business is nonsense. I'd gain from insurance, yes, but I didn't need a new will to secure it. Someone stirring trouble. Langford, perhaps, or even Thorne. Miss Marple smiled. In St. Mary Mead, a forged letter hid a lover's quarrel. Motives, Lady Evelyn, are like roots. Hidden, but vital. As evening